You could just feel how rich he was by being so simple and down to earth.
He was a pope for all people. He welcomed all people in the church, and he was a pope that just gave all to making the world a better place.
It'll be about acceptance of a lot of different groups of people. I think maybe a little bit more so than prior popes in the past.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall, where we are turning back to tonight's top story. Pope Francis has died at the age of 88 years old. He delivered his final Easter address yesterday, hours before dying due to a stroke and irreversible heart failure, according to the Vatican. Pope Francis was the 266th pope and the first Jesuit pope and the first Latin American pope, hailing from Argentina. During his papacy, he made history by expanding the church's acceptance of same-sex couples and transgender people. The Pope also called for more action to be done to combat climate change. He also criticized the Trump administration over its policies on deportation of migrants and over the war in Gaza. Here to talk about that and much more is Paul Moses, a contributing writer at the Commonweal Magazine, which fosters discussions centered around faith and public affairs. Thanks for being here. Great to see you, Paul.
Good to be with you, Errol.
Let's just start with his name. I mean, selecting the name Francis, naming himself after St. Francis of Assisi, is actually a bold statement. Explain to our non-Catholic viewers what that means.
Right. No pope had ever picked the name of one of the most loved saints in the history of the church, Francis of Assisi. There's a number of things that means. One is St. Francis was known for his devotion to the poor. St. Francis was also something of a church reformer by creating his Franciscan order and living in a very simple way. He was setting an example for the church at a time when the priesthood was really veering away from where it should have been, and the popes were really highly powerful, kings essentially. So St. Francis did that by example, and while obedient to the popes of his own time, he was trying to change the church for the better. So we definitely see that in Pope Francis, and I thought that might be the case from the very beginning when he selected that name of Francis. And looking back now over the years, I would say that he's lived up to that, what he was aiming for in the beginning. One more thing to add is that St. Francis was a big advocate of reaching out to your enemy and talking to him, most dramatically when he went to Egypt during the Fifth Crusade, and sought out the Sultan of Egypt. Mm-hmm. That event, too, has served as kind of a model for Pope Francis.
Well, yeah, my understanding was that Pope Francis had an interesting ongoing dialogue with one of the great Sunni Muslim clerics and theologians who's based in Egypt, as a matter of fact, that he maintained a correspondence and conversation across the boundaries of faith.
That's very true, Errol. And in that way, I think he is advancing what Pope John Paul II had started with Islam also. So he was building on that very consciously, and it took a lot, more steps forward.
Mm. The fact that this is the first Latin American pope, it sort of tracks with some developments here in the United States, where the share of Catholics who are Latino is rising. It's now at 36%, had been 29%. That sort of shift in the church here is really reflected globally as well. A rising share of the Catholic faith is centered in Latin America.
And it's even more than the numbers in some way, because the young people are more heavily weighted towards being Latino. So yeah, it's really shaping the church in the United States, very much so.
The fact that we have political definitions of what it means to be, say, pro-life, for example, he really scrambles a lot of those categories, right? I mean, unquestionably pro-life. I mean, he's the head of the Catholic Church, and their position on abortion is pretty clear. But he also was in favor of he was against the death penalty, for example. He was in favor of supporting young people who not just at the moment of birth, but throughout their lives, from hunger and from bombings and from other sorts of maladies, which makes him kind of hard to pin down politically.
I would say that previous popes also shared those views, but Pope Francis made it much clearer that being pro-life includes being concerned about the migrant, being concerned about the death penalty. Pope Benedict and Pope John Paul II also had those concerns. But in the United States, there's ideological forces, and that's the term that the Pope had used, that have kind of turned this into an ideology that I think Pope Francis challenged that, and that often led him to conflict with some powerful elements of the American Catholic Church.
Sure. He seemed to be fighting a lot of different kind of internal battles. I mean, certainly he was adored by much of the laity, the community of the faithful worldwide. But he kind of made war on the Vatican traditions themselves, right? I mean, I noticed that he's going to be buried outside of Vatican City, that he's, from
yes.
start to finish, he wanted to be known as a bit of an outsider, not just the leader of the papal court.
Yeah. Santa Maria Maggiore is one of the major basilicas of Rome, and even older than St. Peter's, and amazingly beautiful mosaics and everything. And there is a icon there of the Blessed Mother that he's especially fond of. But goes all the way back to like the 6th century, this icon. But he definitely was in conflict with, especially with the American, some of the American bishops. I think he saw a problem there. I think he saw the influence of money, the influence of ideology, and that was something he definitely took on. Within the Vatican, he was really elected to reform. Pope Benedict just threw up his hands, basically, and so at that point, the cardinals knew we need somebody who can deal with the curia. And I think that battle was still going on. I think maybe some of the things he still had planned have now been cut short, and we'll see what the next pope does if the next pope continues that path.
Well, Paul, do you think he was influenced by or even part of the movements of the community-based movement, the liberation theology movement that was so popular in Latin America in the 1980s?
I think when he was in Argentina, he had some conflict actually with some parts of the liberation theology movement, but that overall he definitely adopts its larger view of what we call that the church should have a preferential option for the poor in making decisions. Now, people forget that Pope John Paul II adopted that too. We think, granted, Pope John Paul II had more serious arguments because of his own background in Poland, dealing with the communists. So any hint of Marxist analysis really bothered Pope John Paul. So I do think it's had a major influence on Francis, and to an extent on the whole church. If you go back and read what Pope Benedict wrote about economics, it's to the left of any Democrat you've had on your show, Errol.
No, very, very, very interesting. I've always been interested in what they call these seamless garment Catholics, where they want to sort of be consistent, and it usually breaks most of our political categories.
I think you put your finger on it there, if I could say, because the seamless garment was an idea, a phrase that came from Cardinal Bernardin in Chicago, who was a liberal cardinal. And Cardinal Law and our own Cardinal John O'Connor really came out, and they kind of all ganged up on him. But Pope Francis really adopted that approach, and so the more conservative elements in the church in America still don't like it, and that's the source of a lot of our conflict.
Yeah, no, being a consistent Christian will make everybody mad, no question about that. Thank you very much, Paul. Great talking with you, Paul Moses.
You too, Errol. Thanks.
We're going to take a short break now. When we come back, we'll turn our focus to the race for mayor. With roughly 2 months to go until primary day, I'll be joined by 2 top consultants. Stay with us. Thank you for watching our YouTube channel. Let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage, and click the subscribe button right here. You can also download our app or watch us on TV to learn more about the candidates, where they stand on the issues, and more. We'll see you then.